Hi guys, welcome back to another exciting video, so sit back, relax, and let's get started. Welcome to Drevrena. Passengers, please exit the plane carefully and take all of your belongings. After such a long plane ride, a woman with gray eyes and brown hair with gray tips steps out of the plane with her suitcase. She smiles as she breathes in the air of her hometown before looking back at the plane's interior. Come on, our families are waiting. 6 other women follow her out of the plane and into the airport as the 7 of them step into the building. People look at them in awe and reverence. The crowd even parted for the 7 women as they walked to their destination. This is odd, one woman with soft hazel skin and blue eyes remarked as she adjusted her light hijab. I know we're famous, but I didn't think it'd be like this. A taller ebony woman puts an arm around the nervous woman with her violet eyes showing concern. You'll get used to it, Carla. Just see it as being the popular group in high school. Her dark curls with violet tips shine from the sunlight coming through the airport windows. Carla chuckles before smiling slightly. Thank you, Tara. Tara smiles back before looking forward. Ahead of them were 2 women holding hands. One had freckles over her driftwood skin while her ginger pigtails with yellow tips bounced behind her head. The other was tan and around Tara's height, making her look down at the ginger with red, soft eyes. I didn't think you'd be so excited, Arya. The woman with medium dark brown hair and red tips acknowledges. It's just been a few years since we've been home, you know, Arya states as her yellow eyes meet the red in a chipper tone. I can't wait for our families to get together for dinner. By the way, Alexis, my mom said that she was going to be making meatloaf the way you enjoy it. Arya pauses and looks away with a blank expression. Wait, did she tell me to keep it a surprise? Alexis laughs before leaning down and kissing Arya's cheek. Don't worry, I'll be happy anyway. Arya squeals at the sudden kiss before giggling. Their hands held the other tighter. Now ahead of them were 2 women and 1 person. The person was shorter than the other women in the group, especially the twins they were walking in between. Their sandy skin made them stand out between the twins' beige tones. Finally, we're back home. They groan out, making the twins look down at them, ruffling their short, almost black hair with black tips. Their black eyes narrow at the people parting for the group. And why can't these guys just, relax? I saw at least one guy looking as if he was going to shit himself. That made one twin laugh while the other shook her head. Next, just because we're back home, it doesn't mean you can stop acting professional. The woman in gray scolds before looking at her twin, who had green tips and eyes instead of gray. And Ember, you shouldn't encourage that behavior. Whoa, sis, I know you're our leader and all, but you don't have to keep it up anymore. Ember lightly pushes her sister's shoulder while Nex nods in agreement. Yeah, Emma, loosen up a bit. Emma sighs and then chuckles before not saying anything else. She had to admit that they were right. But it was difficult to break out of the leadership role after being away from home for so long. That changed when she and her group finally made it out of the airport. Mom, Dad, Emma and Ember stop as their friends drop their luggage and rush forward to their families. The 2 smile at the sight before frowning at looking at each other. I thought they agreed to be here, Emma says quietly while Ember checks her phone. After a moment, Ember sighs and looks up. Mom said that Xavier was held up by work. Ember rolls her eyes and puts her phone away. The 2 then watch as their friends get their luggage, say goodbye, and leave with their families. The twins sit on a nearby bench as the sun slowly sets behind the airport. It's funny, Ember started, we're back home after a few years, and it only feels like yesterday we were saving the world from annihilation. Emma looks at her sister. The light group's work is never done. Ugh, don't remind me. I don't want to think about everything we did for the past few years for at least a week. You know that since we're back, news outlets will interview us about it, right? Ember blows a raspberry before taking out her phone and popping in her earphones. Her green tips start to glow as the grass sways with her head. Emma chuckles at the accidental use of magic before looking to her other side, unsurprised at seeing a pale, Korean man with short light gray hair sitting there. So, what do you think about being back home, Moon? Emma leans back against the bench. She raises an eyebrow, sensing that her guardian was feeling nervous. Moon looks at her with his gray eyes that matches hers with a slight frown yet remains silent. Are you okay? Emma looks at him with concern. Ember notices this and pulls out her earphones. What's going on with Moon? She asks, also looking concerned before looking in front of her. You're being quiet. To the unknowing eye, it would look as if the twins were talking to no one to them. They were talking to the guardians, powerful, magical beings who live to serve the groups of light and dark. 7 guardians for each 7 members of the 7 magic types. For Emma, Moon is the arcane guardian, and they've always had a connection due to the magic Emma wields. The same is said for the others, so Emma feeling a sense of dread from Moon was unusual. Just be careful, Moon says before dissipating into the wind. Emma looks back at Ember just as Ember points at a car. Look, I think that's them. She stood up with a smile, but Emma could hear an edge to her voice. Did yours also tell you to be careful? Emma stands up, holding the handle for her suitcase. Ember's frown fades slightly, telling Emma that Ember's guardian did. Smiles then form on their faces when the car stops. 2 people step out of the car immediately, with an older woman with brown graying hair and hazel eyes rushing towards them with her arms spread open. My babies, their mother exclaimed before pulling the twins into a crushing hug. The two laugh as they hug their mother back before looking up at the other person. A man in his 40s with short graying hair stands there with a smile despite his clear exhaustion. My girls was all he said before joining the hug. The family stayed that way for a few minutes before pulling away. Their mother was tearing up as she smiled widely. I am so proud of you both. You've grown up to be such strong ladies. I just knew that you would help the world in some way. Ember sniffles. Mom, you know I can't stand to see you cry. While Ember hugs her mom once more, Emma smiles as he puts a hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry we didn't arrive here on time. You know how the organization is. Don't be bothered. Xavier, we understand. Emma nods at her stepdad. Xavier nods back before grabbing their bags and taking them to the car. It takes a while for the bags to fit inside the trunk. But after it is done, the family drives away from the airport. You two know that, Xavier, and I want every detail on your trip around the world. Their mom looks back at them with a gleam in her eyes. Come on, Mom. We're still tired from the jet lag. Ember huffs with a slight pout. Their mom then chuckles. I know, but it's just been so long since I've seen you in person. Ember chuckles. Yeah, I get it. It's been 4 years, yet it feels like forever. Their mother then looks at Xavier with a certain expression which the twins knew very well. The air in the car changes as Ember sits up. Did something happen while we were away? Emma asks. We'll talk about it when we get home, Xavier answers with a serious tone. The twins look at each other, silently agreeing that this may have something to do with what their guardians said. The car ride home was spent in silence. Aside from a few attempts from their mother in lightening the mood, the car then parks in front of a house in a neighborhood. Welcome back home, girls, their mother says before stepping out of the car with Xavier. As their parents grab their belongings, the twins look at their childhood home. Never seeing any changes from the 4 years they were gone, they smile at this before following their parents inside. As soon as they stepped in, they were greeted by their living room. Ember notes as she turns her head towards a doorway. Mom's making tomato salad for dinner. Emma raises an eyebrow in disbelief at the choice. We both enjoy it, don't we? Ember nudges her sister before walking to the dining room. Emma passes by their luggage being placed on their couch to the dining room, seeing her sister sitting in front of Xavier. Meanwhile, their mother was carefully placing the salad in 4 separate bowls. Emma sat next to her sister, whose attention was on the tomato salad. Emma's attention was on Xavier, who seemed lost and thought. He looks up at Emma just as her mother sits next to him. What is it that you wanted to tell us? Emma immediately asks. You two had a long plane ride. You should eat first before I tell you, Xavier orders. Ember promptly pouts while Emma rolls her eyes. For now, their mother smiles to ease her daughter's worries. Tell us about the sights you've seen on your trip. The twins look at each other before obliging with their mother's wish. The four enjoy their tomato salad as the twins discuss the countries they visited and explored. They were conversing like old times. Back when the twins were much younger, it felt good, but they knew it had to end once the bowls were empty. So what happened? Emma says while setting her bowl aside. Her eyes furrow at seeing Moon appear behind Xavier, confirming her earlier suspicions. After a moment, their mother takes the empty bowls and walks away to give the three space. The twins look at Xavier expectantly, seeing their guardians behind him with grim expressions. Xavier begins. Almost as soon as you and your friends left, crime started to pick up. A coworker of mine who works as a cop told us that while it was just theft, they found faint traces of magic. However, the crimes themselves looked as if they were done by a non-magical person. Emma chimes in. Could the perpetrator have used magic to wipe away their tracks? That's what it seems like. Xavier nods in agreement, but the police insisted on not having the organization involved just yet. The twins nod, glancing up at their guardians, looking at Xavier in a way that they want him to continue talking. However, 2 years go by of these seemingly separate minor crimes before the murders started. Xavier continues, shocking the twins. Murder? Who was killed? Ember whispers out with her eyes wide. Xavier pulls out a folder from under his chair and passes it to the twins. They open it right away, seeing at least 8 victims. Ember exclaims. The twins look over the photos of the victims before the BLD drains from Emma's face. The librarian and my history teacher. Emma held up the pictures tightly, staring at them in disbelief. And you didn't tell us about this. Ember looks up at Xavier with a slight glare. You two had to focus on your job and helping other countries deal with magic returning. If I had told you or news had gotten out, you all would have dropped your mission and came back right away. Emma opens her mouth to argue against the organization stopping the news from getting out, but closes it, seeing no use in something already done. She instead puts down the photos slowly before looking up at Xavier. Did you tell the families of your friends? Xavier interrupts. Did I ask them to explain the situation to your fellow members in the dark group? Emma's mouth thins, knowing that one of the dark group members doesn't have family, but she stays silent. Xavier then continues. We want you and the groups to know because the chief of police has refused the organization's aid despite the traces of magic found during the minor crimes. The organization has told the chief that if we find more traces of magic or if one of our undercover gets harmed in any way, not only will we get involved but so will the groups. Emma and Ember looked behind Xavier, Emma sees Moon nod before Ember says what she is thinking. But Xavier, you know our history with the dark group. We haven't talked much on our trip either. I'm aware. Xavier nods, but you know your groups need to work together for the sake of keeping balance. I'm sure the Guardians reminded you, right? Multiple times, but it's still awkward, Ember mumbles. Emma sighs shakily as many thoughts go through her head. She stares at the photos with a frown while hugging herself. Ember puts an arm around Emma just as she looks at Xavier. When the time comes, we'll do it. Emma was filled with determination, making Xavier nod approvingly. Thank you, I'll tell you when we need you. For now, at least try to make things less awkward between you and the dark group. The twins nod before standing up and leaving the dining room. As they enter their bedroom, they see how their parents kept it the way they left it. Their beds were kept neat while next to each other with just a nightstand in between despite the carpeted brown floor and white walls. It's clear whose side it is by the appropriately colored furniture and decoration. We come back, and we find out this shit is happening. Ember grumbles, I'll be taking a shower to think about it, sis. Ember ruffles Emma's hair before picking out some clothes and walking into their bathroom. Emma sits on her bed. Looking around the bedroom before covering her face, she feels a warm, comforting hand on her back, making her cry. Let it out. Moon's calming voice soothes Emma's nerves as she weeps. Emma leans against Moon, crying on his shoulder about the victims. Drevena wasn't a big town, so everyone knew everyone. Emma and her friends were at least acquaintances with the victims. But the librarian and her history teacher were quite important to her growing up. I'm sorry, I didn't know how to tell you that they passed away, Moon admits as he puts his arms around Emma, but the life guardian wanted me to tell you that you were on their minds while you were away. That only made Emma sob harder. Moon then begins to hum while rubbing her back, knowing that it is one of the few ways to comfort the young woman. After a moment, Emma pulls away. Moon makes a tissue appear in his hand to carefully wipe away the tears and snot on her face. Do you think I should ask Xavier if I can help with the case now? Emma mutters. You barely return home, Moon gently replies before making the tissue dissipate. You should take the time to process the news and spend time with your loved ones at the same time. Do try to fix the relationship between the light and dark. Moon trails off before suddenly standing up. It seems he followed my advice. Follow me to the front door. Moon phases through the wall like a ghost. Emma takes a deep breath to calm herself before leaving her bedroom. She stops next to her guardian just in time to see the leader of the dark group step into her house. Grant, what are you doing here? Emma crosses her arms as Grant closes the front door behind him. And how did you even get in? I made a copy of the key you gave Phoenix long ago. Am I supposed to knock first? Grant adjusts his round glasses as his gray eyes, a darker shade than Emma's, seemed to study her expression. He had a few gray streaks in his medium brown hair, making Emma raise an eyebrow. You can use arcane to make copies. MHM. Emma glances at Moon, who nods before she smiles a bit. You should teach me someday. Come sit with me on the couch. The two leaders sit next to each other, looking at each other strangely. Moon could sense the tension between them. After all, it had only been a few years since Grant allowed his pride to take over and nearly kill Emma. It took a few moments before Emma broke the silence. Why are you here? Emma tilts her head with a stern expression. Trice told me that I should stay here for a while, Grant replies while looking at Moon with a smile. Guardians in charge of a certain magic type are only visible to those in the groups with the same type. However, both sides see their guardian differently. While Emma saw the arcane guardian as a young Korean man, Grant saw it as an older French woman. Emma calls it Moon based on an observation from her childhood. Meanwhile, Grant calls it Trice, which is a shortened version of protector in French. Moon looks at Emma. I asked him to stay here because I believe it will be helpful in fixing your relationship. When the arcane guardian looks at Grant, Grant smiles wider at the motherly expression on Trice's face. What better way to fix it than to live under the same roof? Trice sways in place. Both leaders turn to each other. Grant adds, the other members have already gone back to their families. You already know that I don't have anyone else, so. Emma's lips thin though she didn't say anything. Besides, I would like to know more about how to socialize. You know how the others and I are. He chuckles while thinking about his members. Emma nods understandingly. She recalls how during the trip, it would be easy for her to talk to her friends while Grant could only hold a conversation with one of his members, his only actual friend. I'll do my best to. I'm sure my sister won't mind, Emma assures before looking at the ground. Oh, did you already hear about? Grant was cut off when he saw the look on Trice's face. Hum a song you like, Emma hears Moon say to Grant. She looks up at Moon with a slight chuckle before looking at Grant. You don't have to. I'm fine. Let me just get you a blanket and pillow. Emma then stands up and exits the living room with her mind only on the victims of the murders. She didn't get much sleep that night from how Ember's eye bags seemed darker that morning. The same was said for her sister in the morning. They got ready for the day before heading to the dining room. There, they saw their mother happily conversing with Grant. Xavier wasn't there, most likely because he already went to work. Grant looks over and waves. Good morning. He then looks at their mother. That's what you're supposed to do, right, Mrs. Green? Their mother nods approvingly, making Grant sigh in relief. The twins then sit down, looking at their phones. Grant leans over Emma's shoulder. What are you looking at? It's rude to look at someone else's phone without permission. Emma scolds, making Grant look away with a mumbled apology. Emma and Ember were looking at the group chat with their friends, where their friends had already started to talk about the murders. Next, man, just when I thought we could relax. Arya, Iker, Carla, those poor families, though disappointed face. Tara, it's a terrible tragedy. I was so upset because I found out one of the victims was a teacher at our school. Alexis, wait. Alexis, it was the same Ms. Johnson. Tara, yes. Arya, well, Next, you didn't know. Alexis, no, I didn't. Next, it's a small town. There's no other Rose Johnsons here, loudly crying face. Next, also my mom said it was the first time she ever saw someone's face slashed into a wide smile. Carla, stop, you're gonna make me cry. Alexis, oi, be sensitive. Emma had Ms. Johnson in her class. Next, oh shit. Next, my bad. Emma had to lean against her mother just to sob over her dead teacher once more. When people walked through the town of Drevren, the birthplace of the revival of magic in the groups, the citizens were in fear because of the murders. Newspapers and TV programs brought up theories made by the police. One theory says that it's an escaped convict from another town. Another says that it could be multiple murderers. Citizens all had an agreement. The light and dark would return the hope to the town once and for all. You know, I'm one for being gloomy, but this is just depressing, said a small, pale woman with black eyes as she walked on the sidewalk. Her long hair was split into braids, with one side of her hair being white and the other being black. Walking behind her was Nex and Arya, who were doing their best to catch up with Nex's dark group counterpart of Death. I mean, can you blame them, Denise? Nex replies, looking at the people walking by them. Arya smiles slightly. At least they're looking at us as a source of hope, even though we're going somewhere instead of working on the case. Arya blinks before looking at the back of Denise's head. Where are you taking us anyways? It's this toy store that opened almost 2 years ago. My parents go there often in their free time. Nex groans. You're taking us to a children's store. Arya flicks Nex's forehead while pouting. Hey, adults can enjoy toys too. I get why Ari's coming. Nex walks faster to be next to Denise, but why am I here? It also has a lot of vintage items. Denise grins up at them. Sold, was what Nex replies with, making the other two laugh. After a while, the three stop in front of a store with a bright neon sign that says Jason's Toy Vintage Store. A neon sign. Really? Nex raises an eyebrow at Denise. What? I heard the owner has style. She shrugs before opening the door and going inside with Arya and Nex following. Inside, the store was filled with the smell of lavender and wood. They look around, seeing the toys and vintage items neatly perched around the store and on seemingly endless shelves. Holy crap, Nex blurts out as they look up at the shelves. I didn't think it'd be this big inside. Welcome. The three jump in surprise at the loud voice stepping out from between the shelves. A tall man with long red burgundy hair approaches them. The man seemed to be dressed in vintage clothing with his top hat, white button-up, beige vest, a suit jacket with white fur at the collar, and black pants. The girls had to strain their necks when he got closer because he was much taller than them. My name is Jason Mayer, and I'm the owner of this store. What are your names, ladies? Before they could even say their names, Jason gasps. Oh dear, how could I forget? He exclaims with his honey-colored eyes piercing them. He takes off his top hat and promptly bows. I apologize for not recognizing you. Arya giggles, bowing. Is that even necessary? Hell no. Nex adds, stand up straight. Jason nods and does what they say. Putting his hat back on, he has a small smile as he looks them over. Of course, Arya Lloyd. Nex Khan and Denise Lebedev. He pauses before he kneels to Denise's level. Hey, your parents are Alexei and Vera Lebedev, right? Yeah, was all Denise said before Jason suddenly picked her up. Arya and Nex had to stop themselves from laughing as Jason twirls the girl around. Oh my stars, this is their lovely daughter that they always talk about. I heard so much about you, but I didn't think you'd be so cute. You look just like a doll. Jason smiles at Denise, who returns the smile. If you don't put me down, she says calmly, I will scratch you until you bleed. As a short person, be very afraid. Nex stares at Jason with a blank expression that somehow felt threatening. Right. I don't want to be haunted by your ancestors. Jason chuckles before putting Denise down. Jason then turns around and waves over another man. The man was dressed like Jason, except his vest was dark blue and his button-up was black. He didn't have a hat or jacket, making him look less flamboyant per se. His long, black hair was shadowing his face as he stood next to Jason. This is Von Volkov, but he prefers to be called Vine. And he's my assistant, Jason explains while having an arm around Vine's shoulders. He doesn't talk much, but he's good at his job. Vine looks at Jason, then focuses on Denise. This is the Lebedev's daughter. Vine, you've seen the news, right? She's part of the dark group. These two are her friends from the light group. Jason explains before pausing. You are friends, right? I heard how the relationship between your groups isn't the best. Hey, Denise shrugs. I'm friends with Arya through a game. And I got along well with Nex during the trip since we both have death, so I know they have my back, right, guys? She turns around, only to see Arya and Nex not there. guys. Whoa. Denise realizes that the two had gotten closer to the shelf lined with human-sized dolls. These look freaky realistic, Arya says as she plays with the hair of one of the dolls so soft. Where are these from? Next looks back at Jason and Vine, who walks over to them with Denise. We made them, Jason says proudly, making the three look at the two with wide eyes. Really? How'd you get so talented? Denise asks as she looks at one of the dolls that was the size of a 6-year-old. Jason and Vine look at each other before Jason puts his hands on his hips. I've always had the talent of making toys since I was young. He boasts Vine comes from a long line of doll makers, so it was only natural for the two of us to get together and start a business. Cool, Arya says in awe, smiling as Jason puts an arm around Vine once more. With her earth magic, Arya could sense Vine rolling his eyes. Wait, she blinks as she stares at Vine before tilting her head. Do you have a prosthetic eye? Jason's eyes widen before he looks at Vine. Vine slowly parts his hair, making the three gasp. They didn't gasp from how he looked because he had sharp, gaunt features. They didn't gasp because of his scars when they had their own. They gasped because while his left eye was a stormy blue, his right eye was pink. You know, Ari next looks at Arya. People tend to cover their face for a reason. I didn't. Arya stammers as she looks at Vine, shaking her head. I didn't mean. It's fine. Jason interjects. You were only curious. You don't mind, right, Vine? Vine only nods before letting his hair fall back on his face, allowing his hair and the shadows to conceal his features. I say, my dear Lloyd. Jason looks at Arya curiously. How did you know? It's because of my magic. Arya grins as she puts one hand on her hip and the other on a table. I can sense anything that touches the ground. For example, I can sense her heartbeats. Arya could swear that Jason's smile fell for a second at this. Really? Jason tilts his head while crossing his arms. Can you sense every heartbeat? Arya nods. Yeah, I can sense the heartbeats and footsteps of everyone passing by the store. After a moment, she looks down the store. I sense a heartbeat down there. Arya tilts her head towards the back of the store casually. Oh, that must be one of our volunteers, Jason explains. Vine, can you check on her? Vine nods before walking away. Jason smiles warmly at the three. Is there anything you want today? He asks. No, Denise admits. I just came here to show these to the store. Ah, but these dolls are so cute though, Arya protests, while holding up the doll that was the size of a 6-year-old. How much? Jason thinks for a moment before taking off his top hat and jacket. He puts them on Denise. Though the top hat went over her eyes, she adjusts it before looking up at Jason with a raised brow. Take the doll for free since you're the town's hope. Arya gasps before squealing and hugging the cute doll in her arms. Jason then kneels to Denise's level once more, adjusting the jacket on her shoulders. Your mother and father seem to really like those, Jason explains before carefully tucking a strand of white hair behind Denise's ear. They've been such lovely customers that I decided to give them for free to their lovely daughter. Jason pokes Denise's nose, which makes her blush and glare at him. He chuckles before holding one of her hands. You'll return, right? Jason asks. Denise blinks a few times before nodding. Of course, I'll come back with my parents next time. Good, I'll have a gift prepared for you by then. Jason stands up and lets go of her hand. Have a good day, Dolly. Shut up, Denise pouts while Arya and Nex laughs. Jason winks before waving goodbye at the trio leaving his store. Dolly, Nex chuckles. You're blushing. I'm not. Denise pouts despite her face being red. It's just embarrassing. Well, you are wearing a dress, Arya admits as she carefully carries the doll. You do look like a doll. Denise sticks her tongue out playfully before putting her arms through the jacket sleeves. This actually matches with the dress pretty well. Denise admits that Jason really does have style. Denise then looks up at the doll in Arya's arms. It had a body made from porcelain with makeup painted carefully on the face to make it look cuter. The doll had a blue puffy dress, long white socks, and black flats. Blonde curly locks cascaded down the doll's back with a blue bow clipped on. The doll's blue glass eyes were staring without seeing while a perpetual smile was etched on its small face. Does that doll even have a name? Denise tilts her head. Next checks a tag attached to the dress. It's named Lucy. 10 minutes later, 14 people trudged through the forest next to Drevrina. The Guardians led the two groups as they walked through the trail silently. This is for the best, Moon says as he looks back at Emma and Grant. We have repurposed the Dark Group mansion into a home for all of you to stay and call it your new headquarters, Moon explains. Emma looks at Grant. Seeing his excited expression, she then looks back at her group and his, seeing the types walking next to each other. Are you sure we had to leave our belongings behind? Grant asks, looking at Trice curiously. Trice nods at Grant before explaining. That's the nice part about magic, it gives you everything you ever need. Trice winks before looking forward once more. After a moment, the groups begin to chat with the same types. Some were awkward, but others were more friendly, and between Grant and Denise was a young man with peaky skin and blonde, gelled hair with a green streak. His dark green eyes look around Cybele Forest before looking at Ember. It's lovely that we get to live in the woods. It'll be great for our magic. The man smiles at her, who grins back awkwardly. Yeah, can't wait to do that, Caspin. Walking behind Denise was another man with caramel-like skin. His dark brown hair was held back in a ponytail with a yellow streak. His dark yellow eyes were kept on the doll in Aria's arms. That thing is creepy, he admits. What are you talking about, Phoenix? Lucy's so cute. Aria smiles and kisses the doll's forehead. Phoenix rolls his eyes before looking ahead, or rather, keeping his eyes on Emma. Behind him was a woman with medium strawberry blonde hair with a dark violet streak. Her dark violet eyes were filled with curiosity as she looked around the forest. I've never been in Cybele Forest before, she admits to Tara. You'll enjoy it, Sumire. Tara pats Sumire's back. Your guardian will be able to teach you everything you'll need to know. Behind Sumire was another woman with long dark brown hair with a dark red streak. Her bronze skin was covered in faint burns, which were being inspected by Alexis. We have to figure out how to control our flames, Isabella. Alexis shows her own hands, showing faint burns. I thought we'd be immune to the burns by now. Then again, we get too excited. Isabella chuckles as her dark red eyes look around the forest, though we'd have to be careful because we don't want to cause a wildfire. Last in the dark group line was a tall man with the skin of mahogany. His short raven curls had a dark blue streak. Matching his eyes, they were focused on Carla with a sparkling look. And then you have to put the water into a boil until the vegetables rise to the surface, Carla explains before she looks up at him. Am I rambling too much, Raymond? Not at all. He chuckles and smiles sweetly. I love hearing your voice. Carla blushes before giggling and continuing to speak. Emma and Grant stay silent. In comparison to their group members, they just focus on their guardian. After a while, the two stop, causing the others to stop as well and go silent. We're here. Moon dissipates as the 14 gasp. In a clearing, there was a 2-story Victorian mansion. In front of them, it was surrounded by a lush garden with many flowers, herbs, fruits, and vegetables. It took only a second before Aria happily ran inside. Let's go, Lucy. Hey, wait up. The others follow after her before quickly exploring the stone mansion. The first floor had the usual rooms you'd have in a home, such as a foyer, living room, kitchen, dining room, and laundromat. However, it also included a dance studio, library, and a gym with a pool. The second floor, meanwhile, was relegated to only bedrooms aside from 2 simple guest rooms. There were 14 bedrooms for the groups. The rooms were large enough to hold what you would see in a typical bedroom, with a bed, dresser, wardrobe, and decorated with the owner's interests. It also had supplies to help with their magic, books, a source of what their magic is, and their weapon. A perfect base for imperfect people. After settling in, Aria carefully sets Lucy on a shelf lined with stuffed animals, resting its hands on its lap. There we go, nice and comfy. Aria smiles at the doll. There's a knock on her room door before it opens, showing Phoenix. Hey. He looks around Aria's room before cringing at the doll. Do you know where Emma is? She's downstairs in the library. Aria grins before pouting. Also stop cringing at Lucy. It's not my fault she looks weird. Phoenix shakes his head before closing the door. Phoenix walks downstairs, immediately smelling hot dogs from the kitchen as he passes through the dining room. Caspin, can you help Ember get what we need from the garden? He hears Carla ask. On it, my dear. He could feel Caspin rushing around the kitchen. He then hears Raymond's panicked voice. Oh, Issa, don't burn the whiners. Issa laughs at this. Don't worry about them, they'll be fine. Oh crap. This is definitely going to be fun, Phoenix mumbles as he proceeds to walk down the hallway. The hallway was lined with paintings of past members of the light and dark groups. He looks at them briefly before continuing to walk. He passes the dance studio, where he notices Tara teaching Sumire a dance as a form of training. He has a glimpse of Alexis working out in the gym with Nex and Denise playing in the pool. He then opens 2 large doors into a vast library. It looked bigger than the house, but Phoenix chalked it up to the Guardian's magic. Is lunch ready? He looks to the side, seeing Grant sitting on a chair with a book in his hands. No, I'm just looking for Em. Grant nods before pointing. She's over there, just be sure to whisper because this is a really good history book, Grant says before looking back at his book. Phoenix walks through the library before he feels a heartbeat through his feet. He smiles as he slowly approaches Emma, who is sitting on a chair with her back turned to him. He gets ready to pounce on her and then, don't even think about it, Emma whispers, making him blow a raspberry. Come on. Phoenix sits next to her with his voice low. How do you know it was me? Emma doesn't look up from her book. Because I know you. Ooh. Phoenix looks around the library as Emma hums to herself. He then looks at Emma and rests his head on his hand. She notices this, so she sets down her book. What? Nothing, he says sheepishly as he grins. Just admiring you. Emma shakes her head with a chuckle before looking away. He puts his hand on her cheek and tilts her head to make her look at him. Are you being shy? He teases at her blush. Of course not, she mumbles. He merely chuckles before cupping her face and leaning close. She puts one of her hands on his lips, stopping him. Hold on, Phoenix. Emma trails off and pulls away. I'm sorry, he suddenly blurts out. Did I go too far? No, she sighs before showing the book to him. I just want to find a way to help out with the investigation once the organization calls us to help. The book was on police investigations. He picks it up and opens to where Emma left off. Murders, he sighs before looking at her with saddened eyes. I know how much you enjoyed Ms. Johnson's classes, and want to read it together. Yes, please. She smiles slightly as they put their arms around each other and set the book on the table. She rests her head on his shoulder as they read the book. They stay that way until Grant walks over to them. Hey, lunch is ready. They made BLTs. Oh, Emma looks back at Grant before leaving a bookmark and closing the book. Let me just take this back to my room first. All right, see you. As Grant walks away, Emma and Phoenix stand up, looking at each other. So I'll see you at lunch then, Emma mumbles. Yeah, he replies. Their eyes linger on one another before they walk away with their hands grazing against each other. They stay that way until the two go in separate directions. When everyone was in the dining room eventually, it was silent as everyone began to eat their BLTs. They stare at one another before Carla clears her throat. Do you all enjoy it? She asks shyly. It's quite good. Grant replies, it's what's the word? Delicious. Denise then snickers. I thought you said that the twins' mother taught you more words. Ember gasps. Oh, by the way, our mom wanted to give you her pancake recipe. The conversation eventually included more and more people until all 14 were talking. They all talked as if they were old friends. Despite having seen each other on the trip, they joked and laughed as if they weren't at each other's throats long ago. And that's how you don't accidentally get poison ivy in your soup during a camping trip, Ember finishes. Oh, remember the camping trip we had before traveling around the world? Nex leans back against their chair while crossing their arms. Ah, that was fun. Denise grins. All the scary stories we told. The others nod while Carla shivers. I had so many nightmares. She admits I felt so bad for a lot of them. Sumair nods. Me too, it's horrible. How humans can be. The others nod sadly before Ember and Caspin cringes. What? Emma looks at them with concern. Ember whispers, I hear a tree screaming. What? Sumair tilts her head. You can hear plants. Trust me. Caspin mumbles, it's not fun to step on grass now. Should we even be concerned about a tree? Issa asks, clearly showing that she wasn't. Caspin stands up and hurries out of the dining room almost as soon as he leaves. Emma's phone rings. When she gets it, she sees that it's Xavier. She answers the phone. Hello. Put the call on speaker and gather the groups, Xavier orders. Emma does what he says and puts her phone on the table. Are all of the members here? Xavier asks. Caspin went to check on something outside. Grant responds. Go get him. All of you need to be here for this. No, wait. Phoenix chimes in. He's coming back. When Caspin returned to the dining room, he was biting his lip and looking at the ground. He sits down, avoiding everyone else's gaze. Now that you're all here, hey, are you okay? Denise whispers. The chief of police has asked for our aid. That got almost everyone's attention. Xavier then continues. One of our members was attacked about an hour ago by two masked figures. While the member managed to escape, his wife didn't. The police have given the investigation to us, and we'll be giving it to you. Emma or Grant is required to take note. This also requires a life, death, and earth person. Do you accept the task? Emma and Grant look at their group members, seeing their determined expressions. Yeah, we'll accept it, Emma replies. Xavier sighs in relief. Thank you, I'll send you the location. See you soon. He hangs up when Emma puts away her phone. Grant smiles slightly. You can take charge. I don't really know much about investigations anyways. Emma blinks before smiling back. Thank you. She then looks at the others just in time to see the life, death, and earth duo's faces shift. Nex immediately looks at Emma with a slight frown. My guardian just told me that you'll need to take our dark counterparts as a practice in leading them. Phoenix immediately grins at Emma. That's fine with me. Denise grins too. Me too. She had to nudge Caspin to get his attention. Huh. He looks up then nods. Yeah, it's fine. Oh, okay. Emma stares at Caspin before standing up. Well, we'll be back soon. After some wishes of good luck, the four leave the mansion. As they walk down the trail back to Drevrina, Caspin stops at some point and looks at a tree. Hey, Phoenix stops and looks back at him. What's wrong? Caspin gestures to Phoenix to come closer, so he does. Phoenix then sees what Caspin saw, a circle with an X over it. Phoenix then looks at Caspin's pale face in surprise. You're scared because of that? A faint blush rises to his cheeks as Caspin mutters, I just have really bad nightmares from. Hey, Denise shouts, are you two coming or what? Caspin takes a moment to get rid of the symbol carved onto the tree. Phoenix links his arm with his friend before they continue to walk down the path. How bad were those nightmares? Phoenix asks after a while. Caspin whimpers before looking at Phoenix. Terrible. It was like the world was constricting around me as I stared. Phoenix puts an arm around Caspin before they realize that they made it out of Cybele Forest. It's nearby, Emma says while looking at her phone. We can just walk there. Denise looks back at Phoenix, making him mouth for them to switch while Denise walks back to be with Caspin. Phoenix walks ahead to be next to Emma. So what was Caspin nervous about? She asks immediately. A circle with an X over it was carved onto a tree. She looks at him with an eyebrow raised. Why would that be carved onto a tree? More importantly, who would carve that right next to our house? He shrugs. Maybe someone saw us walking down the trail and pranked us. If someone did follow us, Emma ponders, you, area, or the Guardians would have sensed it. Oh yeah, so then what do you think? Should we keep an eye out? Let's just worry about the task at hand for now. The four continue to walk in silence before they hear sirens. They walk faster to see an area on the edge of the forest taped off. Here we go, Emma mumbles as she walks ahead. Some officers nearby allow them to pass. The police tape into the closed-off area. There was an outline of the body drawn onto the sidewalk with dried BLD stains around the area. A man with fair skin, medium brown hair, and blue eyes approaches them. So you're Xavier's daughter. Emma clears her throat. Stepdaughter technically. The man nods before holding out his hand. I'm Christopher Wallace from the organization. I was actually the man attacked. Emma shakes his hand while her eyes widen. I'm so sorry for your loss, Mr. Wallace, but should you really be helping with the investigation? Especially with how hurt you are. Christopher had a lot of fresh scars on his face with a noticeable bruise around his neck. He just shrugs as he pulls away his hand. I've been through worse, he sighs. Besides, I've been wanting to help investigate this case for a good while. I may have moved here about 4 years ago, but I quite like this town. Emma nods in agreement while also looking at him strangely. Denise narrows her eyes at Christopher. Noticing this, he chuckles. What? I handle my emotions differently. Emma just nods before using her magic to tie her hair back into a bun and summoning a notepad and pen. Can you three explore the area for clues while I interview him? She looks back at the trio. They nod before Caspin goes to the edge of the forest. Phoenix takes a few steps away, and Denise walks to the chalk line. Emma notices Denise eyeing him suspiciously before clicking the pen and pulling Christopher aside. Tell me everything that happened. So, Christopher begins. I was walking with my wife, Yoko. While on my break, all of a sudden, these two men jumped us. Can you describe them? They both had jackets and masks. One had an orange one with a white mask. The lips on the white mask were black. The other had a yellow one with a black mask and a sad red face. Emma writes this all down while nodding. So then what happened? I was fighting the one in yellow while Yoko fought the one in orange. He chuckles at this. She was a strong woman. He then frowns, but they were much stronger. Yoko told me to run. When one of them pulled out a crowbar, I kicked and punched the one in yellow. But the one in orange hit me on the side with the crowbar. I had to run to get help. He pauses and looks at the outline. It's okay. Thank you for telling me. Emma pats him on the shoulder. I'm sure with fingerprints they'll find the culprit. They had gloves, he mutters. Emma frowns before looking around for the others. Did you guys find anything? They approach her with sullen expressions. Emma frowns at this. Nothing. They shake their heads. It's a one-and-done attack. Caspin says there's not even any broken branches or anything to see where they could have gone. It was Yoko, right? Denise adds, I tried sensing around for a soul, but it seems that she moved on right after the attack. Wait, can't you and the light death person contact the victims? Christopher suddenly asks. Denise smiles and facepalms. Why didn't we think of that? She then frowns and hums. It's going to take a while though. Even so, we'd be lucky if we even get information. You said the two who attacked you wore masks. Emma notices Phoenix's face shifts. If those two were responsible for the other murders, Denise continues, or if it was a surprise attack, then we'd be lucky to get new information. It's worth a shot, Christopher responds. Phoenix then raises one of his hands before suddenly turning around and stomping his foot. Two people promptly get knocked out of the forest onto their faces. Those two were standing there for a while, Phoenix explains as he approaches them. As soon as both men stood up, they were tied together by a whip. So, Caspin holds the handle of the whip tightly. Care to explain why you two are near a crime scene? The two men struggle against the whip. Hey, we don't mean any trouble. One with dark brown hair says. Caspin raises an eyebrow before looking at Phoenix. Make sure that they're telling the truth. When Phoenix walks over to the men, Caspin loosens the whip. Phoenix puts each hand on one of the two men's shoulders. Start talking, he warns while emphasizing his grip on their shoulder. Okay. The brown-haired one exclaims. We're film students from the University of Thoth. The others blink at this before Emma looks them over carefully. They seem to be in their late 20s, with one having sideburns and the other having a faint mustache. University of Thoth. Denise raises an eyebrow. That exists. Christopher puts his hand on his chin. It suddenly appeared a while after I moved here, but the real question here is. He leans closer to them with a glare. Why are you two here? Police blocked off access to the crime scene in a 3-mile radius before kicking out stragglers and reporters. We were in the forest, sir. The dark brown-haired one with sideburns responds. We were just doing a project on nature when we got lost and stumbled over here. The others look at Phoenix, who nods. They're being honest. Denise looks down and picks up a camcorder, which the brown-haired one with the faint mustache grabs. Thank God, it's not broken, he says, relieved. It belongs to the university. You don't use your phone? Denise asks. Our professor insists on using these. Emma then sighs before gesturing to Phoenix to let them go, which he does. Well, did you two see anything suspicious while in the forest? Any masked figures? The two look at each other, seemingly communicating silently, before the dark brown-haired one responds. Yeah, we did. These two guys bumped into us before running deeper into the forest. While Emma writes it down, Denise glances at her phone before looking at the camcorder. Did you manage to record the two? Let me check, the brown-haired one says as he opens the camcorder. As he does this, Christopher crosses his arms. What can we call you two? Call me Sutton, the dark brown-haired one says before pointing at his friend with his thumb. You can call him Rogers. Rogers nods in acknowledgement before he looks up. We did get something. I guess I pressed the record button by accident. Emma and Christopher immediately go to his side to see the camcorder. The video starts with whoever was holding the camcorder, presumably Rogers, falling down. A hooded masked figure with a yellow jacket stares at the camera before running away. Yes, that's one of them, Christopher says before looking at Caspin while Emma stares at the camcorder. You think you in Light Life could try searching the forest? Emphasis on try. Caspin shrugs. Even with magic, it'd take a while just to search the forest, not to mention any magic we may come across. Guys, come look at this. Excuse me, Rogers. Emma had grabbed the camcorder and gestured to Caspin, Denise, and Phoenix to look at it. Emma paused the video on the shot where the hooded figure was looking at the camera. I swear I've seen someone like that before. Their eyes widen before Denise's eyes narrow. You're right, it's on the tip of my tongue. Wait, what do you mean you've seen someone like that before? Christopher asks. Emma hands the camcorder back to Rogers with a puzzled face while Denise looks up at Christopher. It means we've all seen someone like that before, she responds sarcastically before looking at Sutton and Rogers. You two have ideas. Both men shake their heads before Christopher sighs. Well, you four keep thinking about it while I take these two away. Xavier will give you my contact information. All right, thank you both, Emma says to the two. No problem. Sutton grins. Let's hope we don't end up at a crime scene again. He and Rogers chuckle before waving goodbye and following Christopher out of the area. Emma sighs before looking at Phoenix and Caspin. Well, we have something to do now. We have two masked figures, with one of them being seen somewhere. Life has to check the forest, maybe with Earth, so that it can be faster. Meanwhile, Death has to contact the souls of the victims for any kind of information. Sounds like a plan, Phoenix smiles. And what about the others? Caspin crosses his arms. I suppose we try to compile the information on the murders. Emma hums as she thinks we should also get information on the minor crimes that Xavier mentioned. Ugh. They all look at Denise, who is glaring at her phone. Who the hell keeps calling me? She grumbles before answering and putting her phone to her ear. What do you want? Her anger fades into a blush. Who is it? Caspin raises an eyebrow with a slight smile. Jason, she says softly. My parents gave him my number, so yeah, I'm with my friends. Who? Phoenix looks at Emma. That dollmaker area got Lucy from. Emma explains before shaking her head. Come on, let's just go home. The four make their way out of the crime scene and head back to the trail. Emma walks next with Phoenix. Both were looking at her notes. Caspin was admiring the nature around them while Denise continued to speak with Jason on the phone. Where do you think you saw the masked figure from? Phoenix looks at Emma with a slight smile forming. I still don't know. I swear it's on the tip of my tongue. Emma replies with her eyebrows furrowed. Just where? Where could we have seen it? Internet. Caspin chimes in, suddenly being on Emma's side. Maybe on the internet. Most likely, Emma mumbles. I also agree that it's on the tip of my tongue. Caspin sighs while crossing his arms. I just can't remember where. Phoenix then adds, well, once we have more heads to think with, we can figure it out. But don't you two agree that just from the other masked man's description, it's also familiar? Both guys look at her notes before nodding. I don't understand why it's not clicking though. Like the thought is in my head, but my brain just refuses to connect it to anything, Caspin murmurs. Phoenix nods while rubbing his temple. I just don't get it. Denise, what do you think? Denise. Emma stops walking. I don't think it's nice to interrupt a phone call. When the other two stop and look back at the trail, they see no one. Denise. Phoenix looks around before scoffing. Come on. This isn't the time for a prank. Denise stops walking and frowns. Jason, be quiet for a moment. She looks around before realizing that she wasn't on the trail anymore. Guys, this isn't funny, she calls out. Jason is still on the other line with his soothing voice filled with concern. What's wrong? Denise groans before putting the phone back to her ear. I got lost somehow. I don't know where I am. She looks around some more before she hears a branch snap. Guys, a man with a black hoodie steps out of the trees with yellow-tinted goggles and a mouth guard. Denise couldn't see his face but could see his messy brown hair. Who are you? Denise asks cautiously. The man cracks his neck before taking out two hatchets. Shit, Dolly. Jason's voice seems to fade as Denise stares at the man. What's going on? The man charges at Denise. Guys, to their left, Emma, Caspin, and Phoenix hear Denise's screams from a distance. Denise, Caspin cries out before running into the forest with Emma and Phoenix quickly following him. Denise turns around to run away, only for the man to grab her hair and yank her to the ground. She falls onto her back, dropping her phone in the process. He swings down, Only for her to roll away, she stands up and summons her weapon, a Shaska. "Come at me," Denise challenges while holding the Shaska in front of her. The man chuckles. "Can a little girl like you really handle a weapon like that?" Her face turns red before she glares and huffs. "I'll fucking show you what this little girl can do." She charges at him with the blade aimed at his chest. He hits it away with one hatchet before swinging the other. Denise ducks, only for him to swing down both hatchets. She blocks it with her blade, only to see her phone ringing on the grass. The man takes her momentary distraction to knee her stomach and hit her head with the dull part of his hatchet. "Pick up, Denise, pick up," Caspin exclaims worrily. "Denise," Phoenix calls out. "Denise, where are you?" Emma's heart was racing as she followed the two. She looks around, trying to strain her ears to hear any sign of Denise. Denise. Denise's eyes shoot open with adrenaline pumping through her veins. She avoids the man's hatchets before kicking his leg as he stumbles back. She grabs her Shaska and stands up. Her vision was blurry while she felt BLD seeping down the side of her face. "You're quite the fighter," the man admits as he slowly backs her against a tree, "but it's not enough." "It will be," Denise breathes out before touching the tree behind her. When the man swings his hatchets, Denise moves away at the last second, making the hatchets cut through the now decaying tree. He looks at her just as her wounds heal up. "Don't underestimate death," she smirks before charging at him. The trio stops running as Caspin clutches his head. "I sensed a tree dying," Caspin mutters as his eyes go wide. "If Denise had to use it to heal herself then." "We're coming, Denise," Emma calls out. Suddenly, they hear Denise yelp from somewhere. "That came from up ahead," Emma exclaims. Phoenix shakes his head and points to their right. "No, I heard her from over there." "Ugh." Caspin puts his hand against a tree. If Denise could just suck the life out of a plant again. "Watch out." Phoenix pulls Caspin by the back of his shirt just in time to avoid a knife to the arm. Two women with white, dirtied masks step out of the shadows. One of them wore a white hoodie while having long black hair. The other had a dull, dark red hoodie with long dark brown hair. The one in white was holding the knife while the other had clawed gloves. "More masked people," Phoenix proclaims. Both women lunge at them. Emma raises her hands, forming a barrier around her, Caspin, and Phoenix. "Nice." Phoenix grins at her. "Thanks," she responds, "but we still need to find." The masked women start to bang on the barrier with their knife and fists. As they do, the trio hears Denise's scream around them. "There." Caspin points past the masked women. "She's over there." Emma takes a deep breath as her gray tips slowly rise up her hair before deciding, "You two, run ahead. I'll catch up." Phoenix immediately shakes his head. You can't." "Go." Emma expands the barrier before shattering it, knocking both women against the trees. Phoenix and Caspin immediately run past them just as they stand up. "No," the one in white proclaims with a raspy voice. "Rouge, they're getting away." "Leave them, Kate." The one in a dim red, Rouge, responds authoritatively. "We can handle the light leader." The two look at Emma despite their masks. Emma could tell they were giving predatory expressions. She didn't express any fear as her hands glowed. "Oof." Denise was knocked back against a tree with a cut across her forehead. "You know," the man leans against his hatchet while tilting his head, "you're not very good." "I'm a little rusty." "Okay," she yells, using another tree to heal herself. The man shakes his head before picking up his hatchet and swinging it. "You've got a lot of attitude," he acknowledges while slowly approaching her. "It's almost cute." Denise dodges his hatchets before punching him in the face. It barely phased him due to his mouth guard, and it only made her hand bleed. "Oh, so you're really going there?" He slams her against a tree and wraps his hands around her neck. Her feet dangle off the ground. As she struggles, she grips his wrists tightly, causing them to slowly decay. But he doesn't let up. "You pathetic little." Denise, Phoenix, and Caspin run towards them, only for two people to jump down in front of them. It was the two men who killed Yoko. The one in yellow held a crowbar while the one in orange held a metal bar. "Shit," Phoenix mutters before summoning his Morningstar before looking at Caspin summoning his whip. As they charge at each other, Denise kicks the man off of her, grabbing her Shaska. She swings it across his chest, making a large gash. He looks down at his bleeding wound before chuckling. "You think that's enough to stop me?" He picks up his hatchets. "I can't feel anything." Denise blocks his hatchets before pushing him back. "Even if that's true," she proclaims, "I know what makes a human bleed." The man laughs before cracking his neck again. "That's more like it. You sound like one of us." He raises a hatchet, only for his wrist to be snagged by Caspin's whip. The orange-hooded man goes to bludgeon Caspin, only to be knocked off his feet by Phoenix moving the ground. "Be careful," Phoenix shouts before using his Morningstar to block the yellow-hooded one's crowbar. Phoenix pushes him back before slamming his mace onto the ground. This makes the ground shake, causing the man in yellow to be sucked halfway into the ground. Phoenix and Caspin hurried to Denise while the one in orange goes to help his ally. Meanwhile, Emma was blocking Rouge and Kate slashes and jabs every time she takes a step towards her friend's direction. One of them would step in front of her. "You're not going anywhere," Kate warns when she steps in front of Emma for the 7th time. "You can't block us forever." Rouge circles around Emma. These two are fast. Emma thinks to herself, if I could just find an entrance. Suddenly, the ground shakes. That's it. She grins before sweeping both women off their feet. Emma takes the chance to run between the trees when the ground stops shaking. She hears Kate and Rouge running behind her. She had to strain her eyes to see through the darkness due to the sun setting. She looks back to try and see how far away her chasers are. Only to bump into someone, she tumbles to the ground and makes eye contact with honey-colored eyes. Emma recognizes the man below her as Jason, the dollmaker. Oh, he smiles slightly. Ms. Green. Emma gets off of him and helps him up. What are you doing here? I was on a call with Ms. Lebedev when I heard her getting attacked. I happened to be walking nearby, so I ran in here to check on her. Emma narrows her eyes at this, but before she could question him, a loud, animalistic growl is heard from behind. Run! Emma grabs Jason's wrist and runs away with him in tow. What's going on? I'll explain later. They continue to run in between the trees before they reach a clearing on one side. They see the two masked men with the hatchet wielder on the other side. Was Dolly, Jason cries out before running to Denise. Jason. Denise becomes confused as she's pulled into his arms, bewildering Caspin and Phoenix. Emma stands in front of them as Kate and Rouge go to their allies. Cute. Rouge chuckles before raising her clawed hand, but now you all can die together. When they charge at the heroes, Emma summons a sigil on the ground before she and her friends teleport away. The five of them land on the trail with a loud thud. They were greeted by the smell of lavender, chamomile, and the others rushing over. Oh my god. Ember helps Emma up with her eyes widening at the bottom half of her hair being gray. We felt the shaking. What happened? The five were taken inside. Emma, Phoenix, Caspin, and Denise explain everything about the crime scene, Denise getting separated, and the people they fought. By the time they were done, their friends had grim expressions. Five masked people, why would they target us when they know who we are? Sumair crosses her arms as she pouts. It's because we're now helping with the investigation. Ember suggests they messed up by attacking someone from the organization. They already got away with 8 murders before we came along with us on the case. They must have panicked and attacked you guys. But Grant looks at Denise, who was being closely by Jason. Denise got taken to another location. Then with what you said about hearing her screams from different spots, they've got magic on their hands. I'm sorry, Dolly, Jason murmurs. If I hadn't distracted you then. Denise looks at her friends, with some of them chuckling and the others being unamused. She clears her throat and scoots away. Thanks, she says, but can you not call me that? After he nods, Grant sighs. Okay, Mayers, I'm taking you back home. Jason looks at him before looking at Denise. Will you be just fine? Dude, I managed to fight off against a hatchet-wielding maniac even though I haven't fought in a while. She chuckles. I'll be just fine. This shouldn't take long, Grant assured before grabbing Jason's wrist and leading him out of the house. Denise waves goodbye to Jason, only to see Sumair's grin. What? She giggles. You know, you have to admit that he's quite good looking. Okay, Emma interjects while standing up. We need to go back to the matter at hand. Once Grant returns, we have to make a plan. After a few minutes, Grant returns to the mansion. As soon as he entered the foyer, he was glaring at Denise. He just asked me questions about you, Grant grumbles before leaning against the wall and crossing his arms. Grant. Sumair tilts her head with a curious grin. Are you jealous? No, Grant replies while pouting slightly. I'm just concerned for my childhood friend. All right, back to the task at hand. Emma stands up and cracks her knuckles. With the information that the masked men who killed Yoko ran into the forest, Life and Earth should search for clues. We may be able to find something in that clearing Denise was taken to. Phoenix suggests if any of them left something behind. Ember glances at Caspin and Phoenix before forcing a smile. Sure, we can do that. Of course, we've got nothing else to do anyway. Arya grins. Emma nods before looking at Denise, and next, before she could speak, Denise did it for her. At Guy, Wallace suggests that we should contact one of the victims for clues. Who do you think we should contact first? Next takes one look at Emma before humming. Let's go for Ms. Johnson. Emma smiles at this and wipes away a tear. She then looks at Tara and Sumair. As our smartest team members, you should piece together the clues from the past crimes. I'll have Xavier send them tomorrow. Sounds fun. Tara hums while putting a hand on her chin. It could give us insight on the modus operandi of the killer or killers. Hey, what about Isabella and I? Alexis complains. Yeah, we want some action. Isabella agrees. You two could help us with the clues. Sumair suggests there's action in that, right? Not as fun as fighting masked people in the forest. Isabella huffs before looking at Ember. Can't we go with you to investigate? Do you want to cause a forest fire? Ember retorts with a glare. Isabella glares back before sighing and shaking her head. We'll help with the clues, she mutters. What about us? Raymond asks while holding Carla's hand. You can either help Electric and Fire with the clues, Emma suggests, or you can come with Grant and I into town. For what? Grant raises an eyebrow. We should go around to interview witnesses and whoever else may have seen something, Emma concludes. We'll think about it. Carla smiles before standing up from a chair. Come on, everyone, dinner should be ready. As everyone makes their way to the dining room, Emma notices Isabella and Ember giving each other a glare. She furrows her eyes at this before sitting at her designated seat when all the plates were filled with dinner. Conversation ignited between the groups just like during lunch. What exactly happened against that hatchet guy, Denise? Arya asks. Oh, Denise grins. It was crazy. So when I was faced against the guy. As Denise was recounting her battle against the hatchet-wielding man, Isabella was stabbing her food with her fork, and he was holding me up by the neck. Denise continues, but then Phoenix and Caspin arrived. Gee, Isabella suddenly mutters, keep talking about the fun you had. Why don't you? I'm sorry. Arya raises an eyebrow. You call being nearly choked to death fun? Alexis looks at Isabella with her eyes narrowing. Dude, is this about your need for action? It's not cool to bring it up when your friend is talking about her battle. I'm sorry, Isabella scoffs, but I wasn't the one who brought it up in the first place while they were gone. Carla immediately goes pale when she sees a tiny flame spark on Alexis's shoulder as Alexis clenches her jaw. Oh, so it's my fault for bringing it up. It's clear she was trying to hold back her anger, but it faintly passed through. Raymond notices a slightly bigger flame forming on Isabella's shoulder. Yes, it is. You're reminding me of how boring it is without a good fight. The fire on both of the girls' shoulders sparked to life. That was before I found out my leader and 3 of your friends were in a lot of danger. Danger brings fun. It brings excitement. The others look at each other unsure before Ember clears her throat. Look at it this way. She looks over at Isabella. You won't be able to start a forest fire. Oh my gosh, will you let that go? Isabella was giving a seething glare that was one time. Don't yell at my friend for being concerned about nature. Next glares back. Grant stands up and holds up his hands. Okay, how about we just settle down and... It's not my fault that your friend keeps bringing up what happened in Europe. Isabella claps back. It was an accident, but you just wouldn't listen. Emma stands up as well. Every time she and Grant tried to speak, their voices got overlapped by the arguing. Grant just sinks back onto his chair, giving Emma a frown before she tries again. Isabella stomps out of the dining room, lighting fires with each step. Alexis does the same while leaving through another doorway, yet she only leaves unnoticeable burns. Sumire quickly follows her friend. Baby, come back. Arya chases her wife. Raymond follows Sumire, putting out the fires before they can spread further. Don't burn down the house too. Ember yells as she hurries over to the burnt spots. Shut up already. Issa yells back from upstairs before a door slams. Caspin quickly goes over to help Ember with the burns on the floor. Tara gets up and leads Carla away, who is tearing up from the argument. Nex and Denise take one glance at each other before they walk away to their respective members. Well, Grant sighs. It could have been worse. Save it, Emma mumbles before walking out of the dining room. Grant frowns and stares at his mostly empty plate while Phoenix watches Emma leave. Grant glances at Phoenix before murmuring, everything was different this afternoon. He stands up and starts to pick up the plates before noticing Phoenix still staring at a doorway. Grant advises, go to her, I can handle some dishes. Phoenix looks at his leader with a small smile before leaving the dining room. He walks into the foyer. Seeing Emma sitting on one of the armchairs, he silently sits on the couch next to her. When he reaches over and grabs her hand, she grips it tightly. Everything was nicer this afternoon, she expresses. I thought the trip would have fixed things between our groups, but I know. Phoenix acknowledges it's hard to fix everything that happened between our groups with just a camping trip and a 4-year journey across the world. She rests her head on his shoulder while he puts an arm around her. Emma then mumbles, I just hope everyone works together tomorrow. Our problems are small compared to what Drevrina is going through. Phoenix rubs circles on her arm with his thumb. He wanted to say that even he hoped for the best, but they could faintly hear Isabella throwing a tantrum upstairs. He stayed silent instead as Emma's heartbeat slowed from the adrenaline rush. The couple remained that way until going their separate ways once again to their bedroom, hoping that tomorrow would be a better day. As the sun lights Emma's room, the rays beam on her sleeping figure. She rubs her eyes when there's a knock on the door. She gets up and shuffles her way there with a yawn. When she opened it, there stood Grant, who had his fist raised as if to knock again. Good morning, Em, Grant says with a polite smile while putting his hand down. Morning, Emma replies with a yawn. He looks at her for a moment before tilting his head to the side. Did you not sleep well? She nods before yawning again. I couldn't, so I spent some time writing notes about the victims based on the file my dad gave me a while ago. By the time I was finished, it was 2 a.m. She stops just to stretch. His eyes avert from her awkwardly before he clears his throat. If you're wondering, everyone else already woke up, but a few of us didn't want to eat at the same table because of what happened yesterday. Emma sighs at this before she rubs her temple. Who ate together though? He looks back at her with a small smile. Death, water, electric, and earth. Emma nods slowly at this before turning around and heading to her closet. Your sister went outside as soon as Isabella came. Issa only grabbed her plate before leaving. Grant continues. Caspin and Alexis did eat at the table, but they were quiet. Can't blame them, especially Lexi. Emma hums as she picks out her clothes for the day. I only wish that they understood that even though there can be fun and danger, it's still something risky. Grant leans against a wall with a hum of his own. From what I recall, Issa has never considered the risks of something because she likes to live in the moment. I believe it has something to do with where she grew up. Something bad could happen, yet the people there still act recklessly. He turns around to give Emma the privacy to change as she did. Grant focused on a framed photograph on the wall. It showed around 20 kids and a woman with light brown hair. The photo was labeled Class of 2016, Ms. Johnson. She was her 5th grade teacher. He asks as he stares at the smiling woman. Emma stands next to him with a solemn expression. Before being my history teacher in high school, she was a great woman. Grant looks at Emma, unsure of what to do or say. I don't understand, Emma mumbles. Next mentioned that her face was apparently slashed into a twisted smile. I've been trying to understand why someone would do that to a sweet woman like her. Grant ponders for a moment before slowly saying, well, there are a lot of things that don't seem to have a reason for existing or happening. But there's still someone looking for one. Trying to understand something is what drives humanity even without the use of magic. Emma recalls the plan she made yesterday. How Death will go to the place where Rose Johnson died. She turns to Grant with a look of hope. But we have magic to help us. Ms. Johnson would know Nex, so she's definitely going to respond to Nex and Denise's calls. That's the spirit. He gives her a thumbs up with a small smile. Did I use that right? You did. He sighs in relief. All right, there are some leftover pancakes for you on the dining room table. I should go gather everyone else so that we can bring justice to Johnson and the other victims. Spoken like a true leader, Emma compliments. She gently pats his back before walking past him and exiting her room. He looks at the class photo. Easily noticing Emma with her light gray tips, he frowns for a moment before leaving the bedroom and closing the door behind him. The evidence will arrive shortly via Mr. Wallace. Meanwhile, the rest of us have to come back home by the afternoon. All right. Emma watches as Tara, Sumire, Alexis, and Isabella walk back into the house. Ember, Caspin, Arya, and Phoenix head into the forest, and Nex and Denise walk down the path, all with mixed expressions. She was left behind with Grant, Carla, and Raymond as planned. So who do we have to interview? Carla asks. Emma checks her notepad and explains. We should start with the first murder that happened here. She pauses just to sigh before continuing. The librarian, Lawrence Harpwood. Raymond clenches his fist at the name. Carla holds his hand, giving a look of concern. How did he die? Bludgeoned with his own cane. Emma mumbles before looking away with a whimper. Carla's eyes widen before mumbling. Who would do something so cruel? Someone who's not going to get away with it. Raymond says with a determined look. He's always been kind to everyone, so no one should even hold a grudge against him. Emma nods before turning around. It's been 2 years, but we should try to look for something the police missed, right? The four make their way down the path, keeping close to one another to avoid separation. Well, what do we have? Grant asks as he looks at her notepad. Emma reads out loud. On January 23, 2026, at approximately 8:33 p.m., Harpwood was alone in his library when he struck in the back of his head with his cane. The cameras were shut off before it occurred. The owner of the nearby bakery, Judith Ivans, witnessed 2 hooded people fleeing the scene at 8:41 p.m. Wasn't Mrs. Ivans one of the victims? Raymond asks. Emma nods. Unfortunately, yes, she was the second to die just a few weeks later from armed robbery. For now, we can at least question her husband and child for what they know. Raymond blinks at Emma before narrowing his eyes. Did you ask Carla and I to come with you and Grant just to distract a kid? Pretty much. Grant shrugs. Better you two than us, since Emma and I are too serious looking. They exit Cybele Forest with a chuckle before making their way to a sidewalk. As they walked through the town of Drevrena, there were stares from the citizens, wide-eyed, in awe and fear at once. There were also a few looks of resentment, as if the groups were at fault for the murders themselves. With hurried steps to avoid the staring, they make it to one of the neighborhoods. It's over here. Emma gestures to a mobile house nearby. Grant takes one look before blurting out, it looks like it's seen better days. The other three didn't have the heart to say otherwise. The front lawn was covered in long grass with a few toys littered around. Carla picks up a dirtied stuffed animal before they approach the house. The steps groan under Emma's feet as she knocks on the door. They hear footsteps before the door creaks open. A little girl in a dirt-covered sweater and shorts stares up at Emma with her wide brown eyes. Carla frowns at the girl's hair, seeing how disheveled it is. What is it, miss? The girl asks with a timid expression. Emma clears her throat before kneeling to the girl's level. Good morning. I am Emma Green, leader of the Light Group, my friends, and I would like to speak with your father. A twinkle appears in the little girl's eyes. You're real. You're actually real. My classmates thought you were legends, she says in joy. We're very real, kid, Grant says with a grin. The girl looks at him with a raised eyebrow. Who are you? Raymond covers his mouth to muffle his laugh while Grant stares with a weak smile. Oh, where's your father? Carla asks with a sweet smile. My daddy is asleep on the couch, miss, but we can play. The girl squeeze. Emma and Grant glance at Carla and Raymond before Emma stands on her feet. Grant and I are too tuckered out to play, but our friends here would love to, Emma suggests. Carla holds up the dirty stuffed animal. Is this yours, sweetie? The girl gasps, you found Lady Poopkins. Raymond laughs at this. Watch this. He moves his hand around, making water float above his palm. The water is splashed onto the toy before Carla uses her magic to pull the water away, taking the dirt with it. The stuffed animal was clean now, making the girl clap. Wow, can you do it again? The girl steps out of her home, making Emma and Grant go inside. Have fun, Grant calls out before closing the door. Emma nudges Grant with her elbow, making him turn around. The two grimace at the sight of empty bottles on the floor, leading up to a man snoring on the couch. That's Judith Ivans' husband. He whispers, he wasn't always a drinker. Can you get some water? Grant uses his magic to pick up the empty bottles before walking out of the living room. Emma grabs a nearby stool and places it in front of the couch before sitting down on it. She gently nudges Mr. Ivans' shoulder. It took a few moments for him to wake up. He grumbles, Charlotte, what did I say about HM? He sits up while rubbing his temple just as Grant returns with a cup of water. Don't I know you? Mr. Ivans asks before narrowing his eyes. Wait a moment. How did you get in my house? Your kid let us in. Grant answers as he hands the disheveled man the cup. Before Mr. Ivans could fly into a rage, Emma quickly blurts out, Mr. Ivans, you used to give my sister and me free pastries. Emma, Mr. Ivans murmurs. Emma Green. Emma nods with a sweet smile. Mr. Ivans sighs before he takes the cup from Grant and sips the water. You finally came back, I'm sorry to say, but my wife is, he mumbles. That's what we're here for, Mr. Ivans. Grant explains, we're here to find out what happened to Judith Ivans. Mr. Ivans sighs as he rubs his temples. Emma and Grant remain silent, allowing Mr. Ivans to get his bearings. Where's Charlotte? She's outside playing with our friends, Emma explains. With another sigh, Mr. Ivans implores, what do you want to know? Everything what led up to Judith Ivans' death. Grant asks. Emma then adds, and did she tell you what she saw about Lawrence Harpwood's death? Mr. Ivans sits up straight, giving the two leaders a saddened expression. Judith saw these hooded people running away from the library after she told the police what she saw. Mr. Ivans looks away. We started getting nightmares. About what? Emma asks as she summons her notepad and pen. We were in Cybele Forest being chased by these masked people. Emma and Grant immediately looked at each other with knowing eyes. And they chased Judith and me through the forest every time. They would catch up to us and he stops. What did the masks look like? Grant inquires. One was white with black eyes while the other one was black with a red sad face. Emma mumbles. The men who killed Yoko. Did anything else happen? Anything strange? They could hear Charlotte's muffled laughing from outside. Judith said she felt like she was being watched. Mr. Ivans starts to tear up. We would also find this strange mark everywhere we went. This circle with an X over it. Then both the nightmares and the marks disappear after Judith. While Mr. Ivans covers his face, Emma and Grant stare at each other with wide eyes. Did she say anything else about Harpwood's death? Emma asks tentatively. Mr. Ivans puts down his hands, looking more miserable than ever, before her murderer broke in. We were talking about Harpwood, and then he gasps. She claimed that she remembered something important, something that Harpwood mentioned before that monster took her away from me. Who did it? I couldn't see who because I was blindfolded. All I could hear was her and these growls. They didn't even sound human. Emma recalls the masked women who gave off a growl when they chased her yesterday. I'm sorry, I can't say any more, Mr. Ivans says, defeated. Grant glances at Emma, who reaches over to Mr. Ivans and places her hand on his shoulder as Mr. Ivans cries into his hand. His daughter was sitting on the steps, laughing at the sight in front of her. Again. Charlotte squeeze. Carla and Raymond wipe away the sweat on their foreheads as the blue in Raymond's hair glows slightly. Carla checks her bracelet, seeing the blue stone glow dimly before the two could return to their water tricks. Charlotte tilts her head to the side. Hello. The two turn around to see who Charlotte was referring to, only to see nothing from Cybele Forest a few yards away. Who are you saying hello to, sweetheart? Carla looks down at Charlotte as she walks up to them. The tall man in the suit. He's blending in with the trees. Charlotte answers with a smile. She points to the forest, where there is only nature. There's no one there, Raymond corrects. No, he's right there. Charlotte insists with a pout. Emma and Grant walk out of the house with pale faces when they walk up to Carla, Raymond, and Charlotte. The little girl puts down her finger. The man is gone now. Carla looks at Emma and Grant before gently nudging Charlotte. Why don't you go back inside now? We have to go. Oh, okay. Charlotte pouts before hugging Raymond's leg. Thank you for showing me your magic. You're welcome. Raymond pats her head before nudging her away. Bye-bye. Charlotte skips back to her house as soon as she was inside. Carla and Raymond looked back at the trees. What was she talking about? Grant asks. A tall man in a suit, Carla answers with a worried tone. The four stare at the forest perplexed, not noticing that something was staring back. This is the place, Nex announces, while Emma, Grant, Carla, and Raymond made it to Mr. Ivans's residence. Nex and Denise stopped in front of a closed-off house nearby. The two step over the police tape and walk to the front door. Denise tries to open it, only for it to not budge. You really thought that the police would keep a crime scene open? Nex snarks. Shut up. I just thought that Wallace or the organization's cop buddy would leave it open for us. Denise mumbles before sighing. Well, what are we supposed to do now? We can't contact Ms. Johnson from out here. Break in. Denise stares at Nex as if they were crazy. Nex looks around the house before walking to the side. She watches them approach a tree stump before they look back at her. We can ask someone else to guide us inside. Who? Denise asks as she walks up to them. I remember overhearing Ms. Johnson mention having a cat named Mittens. It seems that Mittens unfortunately passed away while we were gone. Denise gasps before nodding. The two raise their hands to the stump and mumble to themselves. The black in their hair glows dimly as a see-through tuxedo cat appears on the stump. Kitty, Denise exclaims as she picks up the ghost cat and cradles it like a baby. Aren't you the cutest ghost kitty I've ever seen? Who's a good kitty? Nex crosses their arms. Denise, don't patronize the cat. Oh, right. Denise places Mittens back on the stump, where the cat stretches. Now, Mittens. Nex calmly says, we just want to talk to your owner, but we can't get inside. Can you help us out? Mittens meows at the two before hopping off the stump and walking away. They followed it to the back of the house where there was a back door. Mittens start to paw at a nearby rock. Denise walks over and picks up the rock to move it, only to be confused. This feels hollow. She shakes the fake rock, only for a key to fall out of it. Smart move, Ms. Johnson. Nex approves before picking up the key and opening the back door. Mittens immediately enters the house, followed by Nex and Denise. The house's interior was in a contemporary sound, fitting for a lone woman who only had her cat for while despite the comforting sense, everything was covered in dust from lack of use. Mittens meow as it looks around before meowing again. It sits in front of an empty cat bowl as if expecting its owner to come in and feed it. Poor kitty. Denise frowns at the sight. Nex looks around for a moment before facing the cat. Can you take us to her room? Mittens meows loudly as if whining before standing up and heading towards a hallway. They watch the cat phase through a door, which was closed off with police tape. Denise carefully moves it to the side, allowing Nex to open the door. The two immediately shiver, smelling the faint scent of bleach in the empty bedroom, which was only lit by the window. Mittens was on the bed, staring at where a pillow would have been. This is where she died, right? Denise whispers as she steps inside. Nex closes the door behind them and walks over to the window. According to my mom, the killer climbed in through here. Whoever it was then cut open Ms. Johnson's face into a smile before stabbing her to death just a few months ago. Denise stares at Nex, seeing their blank expressions scrunched into a pained look. It's fucked up. They suddenly say I've seen a lot of shit from the morgue and the ghosts I've talked to around the world, but this is legitimately fucked up. You miss her as much as Emma does, right? Nex looks back at Denise with a chuckle, confirming what Denise thought. I may not have been able to take her class, but from the couple of times I've chatted with her, she was a good woman. Mittens meows loudly in a way that sounds like a cry. The two walk over to the bed, where Denise pets the cat and Nex just stares at the bare mattress. She hasn't moved on. Nex concludes. As if on cue, Mittens jumps off the bed as a mist rises from the mattress. The two watch the mist take the shape of a pale woman with light brown hair. She was wearing pajama pants and a long-sleeved shirt, both stained with BLD. When the woman looks up, Denise gasps at the sight of her carved face and frowns at the sadness in her white eyes. Greetings and salutations, Rose Johnson, Nex greets. Nex con Rose whispers as she stares at Nex before looking at Denise. Who are you? Denise Lebedev, ma'am, she responds. Rose looks down just as Mittens jumps onto her lap. She whimpers before hugging her cat, welcoming its purrs. Nex and Denise watch the reunion for a minute before Nex clears their throat. Ms. Johnson, we're here to know what happened when you died. Who killed you? Rose looks up at them with interest in her dim eyes. I'm so happy you and your friends came back. Nex, she states warmly, you all will solve it. I just know it. Be sure to say it to Emma especially. She was a lovely student. Nex's breath hitches as they nod. I will, miss. I won't forget to. Mittens curls up on Rose's lap, allowing her to pet the cat as she admits, unfortunately, I think I've forgotten how I died. All I remember is going to sleep. Then there was a lot of pain. Then I realized I was dead. I'm sorry, sweetie pie. Nex takes a deep breath as if trying not to cry before explaining. You don't have to apologize for that, miss. It's how the soul deals with a horrific death, just like how the brain deals with trauma you didn't forget. It's just repressed so that your soul wouldn't be damaged mentally even if you're hurt physically. Something creaks in the house, making Mittens hold its head up and Denise look around. Nex steps closer to Rose, reaching out to cup her cut cheek. But I will need to bring the memory back to solve the investigation. It may hurt your soul, but I promise to stop the process if it's about to seriously harm your soul. Do you trust me? Rose nods slowly while Mittens jumps off her lap and phases through the door. Denise kept her eyes on where Mittens phased through while the black in Nex's hair glowed again. Their palm on Rose's cheek moves over the cut, healing it. Their hand gently moves to the other side, making Rose's face whole once more. Nex then places their hand on her chest, healing the stab wounds there. As soon as the wounds were gone, Rose starts to breathe heavily. "Oh God, I was so scared," Rose whimpers. Starting to weep, I tried to push them off, but they were too strong. "What did they look like?" "You must remember." Even as Rose holds onto Nex's arm, they don't pull their hand away from her chest. "White, they were wearing something white. They also had long black hair." Rose then tries to push Nex's hand away. "Please, it's so painful. You must remember everything to help us and move on with your cat." Nex insists, not budging. "What else do you remember?" It was then that Mittens phased through the door, meowing loudly. "Mittens." Rose immediately reaches out to her beloved cat. "Denise, keep the cat quiet." "Rose Johnson, tell us more." Nex commands, even as tears swell in their eyes. Denise picks up the cat, where it immediately struggles and continues to meow loudly. She was trying to shush it, only to hear the creak again. "Is something wrong?" she asks the screaming cat. "The smile," Rose wails as she struggles, a twisted smile on their face. They also said. "What?" Nex still doesn't budge. The door suddenly opens, making Rose let out a scream and dissipate into the darkness. As soon as Mittens dissipates in Denise's arms, Nex turns around and pushes her aside. Taking a knife through their hand, the figure in the white hoodie immediately pulls the blade out, making them stumble. They move in to strike again, only for Denise to pull Nex backwards. "I got you." Denise picks Nex up before promptly jumping out the window. The two roll down the eave before falling off down to the grass with Denise on top of Nex. Nex could see the pain on Denise's face and noticed a glass shard launched into her shoulder. "We gotta move," she urges. "We gotta." They hear a raspy scream from above. Nex rolls them over, avoiding the figure, who lands on the ground. Instead, Denise grunts while Nex quickly gets back on their feet and summons their side. The figure grips their knife as they charge at Nex with a growl. Nex takes a few steps away, avoiding the figure's manic slashing. Just as Nex raises their side to strike, Denise pulls them away. "Move." Nex instead cuts through police tape before the two start to run. Nex turns around quickly to throw their scythe at the figure, only for them to dodge. Nex barely notices that their action in rolling the two over caused the glass shard to push deeper in Denise's shoulder due to the adrenaline in the moment. Nex also barely notices the great amount of BLD seeping from their hand. They continue to run, heading towards the path. "Wait a minute, isn't that Kate or whatever?" Nex suddenly asks Denise, one of the masked people who chased Emma yesterday. She looks back for a moment before nodding. "I think so. This beach was stalking us then." With a shared laugh, despite the dire situation, the two stop running and turn around. They raise their hands, making a wall of bones around Kate. They let out a sigh in relief before Nex goes behind Denise. "Let me pull this out so that you could use a tree to heal," Nex offers. "Ember and Caspin won't notice." Rigo. Nex manages to pull the shard out. The two look at Kate, who was just standing in their bone cage staring at them. They then walk to the path, where Denise immediately sucks the life out of a tree to heal her wound. "I wish you also had this ability," Denise admits before wincing at the BLD running down Nex's arm. "How are you even able to handle something like that?" Nex shrugs. "It's not the first time I had something through my hand before. I'll live, but yeah, you're right. It would be nice to have the ability to suck the life out of whatever just so my hand could heal." They take only one step down the path before their hearts sink at the sound of bones breaking. They look back in time to see Kate breaking through their bone prison. "Hey, get away from them." They look to the side to see Emma running over to them with Grant, Carla, and Raymond behind her. "You two, run," Grant orders. Denise nods before she and Nex run down the path, prompting Kate to chase them once more. The four immediately run after her, following the droplets of BLD left by Nex's wound. Carla suddenly stops, making Raymond stop as well. "What?" Carla looks around before shaking her head. "I'm sorry, I thought I saw a little girl." "Why would I?" he questions before grabbing her hand. "Come on, we have to catch up." They start to run again, not noticing a little girl watching them from behind a tree. As Death was summoning a ghost cat, Ember, Caspin, Arya, and Phoenix arrive at the clearing where Denise fought the hatchet-wielding man. "Do you guys really think that we'll find evidence here?" Arya complains. "I didn't feel anything while we were walking here. I doubt the masked people from before would follow us. I know we had to flee last time, but that's only because they caught us off guard," Caspin boasts. This makes Ember scoff. "Yeah, keep telling yourselves that." Phoenix puts his hands on his waist as he faces her and says, "You don't understand. They really did catch us off guard by teleporting Denise away on our way back. Let's not forget their use of magic in mimicking her voice to confuse y'all," Arya points out as she spins around to look. Ember makes her way towards a decayed tree with a frown. "I hate that ability," she murmurs before placing her hands on the tree to heal it. Caspin watches her for a moment and nods. "Only useful part is that if Denise uses it, we can tell if she's in danger. These trees are damaged too." Ember cuts him off. Caspin rolls his eyes and walks closer to help her, only to stop when he sees a circle with an X over it carved onto a tree. "Hold on, Ember. That's what I saw when we heard a tree screaming." Ember looks at him with a raised eyebrow just as Phoenix and Arya walk over. "Damn it," Phoenix facepalms before sighing with everything that happened. We forgot to tell you all that this was what was carved onto that tree. Arya tilts her head. Is it just me or does it look strangely familiar? I remember seeing it in a few nightmares from my childhood. Caspian admits quietly, but I can't remember what else. Phoenix looks at Caspian confused. But just the other day, you were going to say what the symbol was about. Well, I can't remember right now, okay. Caspian retorts. Ember looks between them before sighing. Let's just go back to looking around. Ember and Caspian walk away in separate directions, leaving Phoenix and Arya by the tree. Is Ember still upset over what happened yesterday? Phoenix asks Arya. She doesn't answer. She was staring intensely at the symbol with her eyes narrowed. He nudges her shoulder, making her look at him. What? He points to the symbol with his thumb. Do you recognize it or something? Since when did mind reading come with earth magic? It doesn't. Arya laughs to herself before looking back at the symbol and tilting her head to the side. It does look familiar. I feel like I've seen it before, I think in a game. Arya hums for a moment before looking up at Phoenix. Maybe these masked people are copycats from some murder mystery game. Phoenix chuckles at this. I doubt it. You never know. Phoenix shrugs at this before walking away. As Arya continues to stare at the symbol, she scrunches her face and steps closer to the tree as if it would help her remember faster. It didn't take long for her eyes to wander away from the symbol. She looked up at the tree and tilts her head to the side again. All of a sudden, she kicks the tree, causing it to crack and break a few branches. Arya, what the heck are you? Before Ember could finish, someone in a black hoodie falls to the ground. Arya spreads her arms as if she did a magic trick. Ta-da! Caspian gasps before his eyes flare with rage. You. He immediately summons his whip and wraps it around the man's torso. Ember uses her magic to make the roots of the nearby tree wrap around his legs. 2 hatchets land nearby, making Phoenix glare down at the struggling man. You're one of the bastards from before. Ember looks at Arya. How'd you know he was up there? I saw something shiny, Arya admits as she stares at the hatchets. Phoenix grabs the man's hair and tilts his head up. He pulls up the man's goggles before taking off his mouth guard. Ugh, Ember and Caspian say in disgust. The man's left cheek had an open gash, showing his teeth. He was glaring up at them with his brown eyes and grinding his teeth. Okay, start talking. Who the hell are you? Caspian asks. Who are your accomplices? Your leader, Phoenix adds. And why were you in a tree? Ember also asks while looking away in disgust. The man struggles even more despite the roots scratching into his legs and glares up at them defiantly. Arya stares at the man with wide eyes in recognition. She mutters, have we met before? The man stops struggling just to give her a twisted smile. I'll just say that I don't know you, but you sure know me. The other 3 look at Arya expectantly, who just frowns. I don't. Ember and Caspian abruptly clutch their heads, making Arya and Phoenix's eyes widen and the man laugh. Denise. Caspian turns around in a panic, causing the whip to loosen. The man immediately grabs a handful of dirt and throws it at Ember's face, making her stumble back and loosen her control of the roots. Arya and Phoenix step forward, only for a crowbar to be in front of Phoenix's neck while an arm goes around Arya's, courtesy of the masked men in orange and yellow respectively. Hey, Arya chokes out. Ari, are you okay? Ember asks as she tries to wipe the dirt off her face, only to be pushed onto the ground by Rouge. The masked girl laughs as she gets on top of her. I doubt your little friend will be okay after this. Caspian, Phoenix cries out. As the man frees himself from the roots, Caspian was just standing there with wide eyes. He wasn't staring at his allies nor the assailants that held them captive. His face was pale as he stared at the trees, or rather, what was in the trees. You're not real. He takes a step back. You can't be real, you can't. Phoenix and Arya shivers, momentarily stopping their struggle when they could sense something among the trees. Even Ember was starting to shiver. They all could hear a whisper, but they couldn't understand the contents nor who or what was saying it. The masked figures tightened their grip around who they had pinned, showing that they understood the whispers. With pleasure, the man in the black hoodie grabs his hatchets and stands up. Caspian, Phoenix cries out. Ember takes in a shaky breath before stammering, as someone, do something. See, can't? Arya squeaks out as she digs her nails into the masked man in yellow's arm. I can't move. Caspian drops to his knees with tears running down his cheeks, shaking his head and mumbling. The man in black walks closer to Caspian, dragging his hatchets along the dirt. Ember struggles to pull her wrists away from Rude's grip, which was unusually tight as Arya starts to choke. Phoenix is trying to move. He tried to move his legs to stomp on the ground and use his magic. He weakly grips the crowbar over his windpipe, wanting to bend or break it. His body refuses to go with his wants against his own will. His eyes were beginning to drop from the lack of air. All he could do is hopelessly reach his arm out to Caspian as the man cracks his neck. He raises his hatchets before sneering, send my regards to my father. Phoenix closes his eyes just as he swings the hatchets down. Next thing that he knew, however, someone was shaking him when he opens his eyes. Ember was dragging him onto his feet. His vision was blurry, with his ears ringing. He could faintly see Ember helping Arya up while there seems to be figures on the ground. All that mattered to him was the blob of green among the blurry sea of brown. He stumbles closer and picks up Caspian, who was limp in his arms. The ringing in his ears becomes louder as he and the girls hurry away from the clearing as they continue to walk. His vision becomes clearer and the ringing in his ears fades away. Now having his senses in order, he immediately looks at Ember and Arya, able to hear their heavy breathing from their expressions. It seems that they also had problems with their senses. Are you two okay? Phoenix asks what happened. Ember rubs her eyes before mumbling. That Rouge girl got off of me. I heard a struggle before my ears started to ring. Arya looks behind her as Phoenix adds, I think I saw the masked people on the ground. Doesn't that mean? Arya looks back at them with a panicked expression. We left behind the people that saved us. Hold on, how do you know it was more than one person? Phoenix questions. The men who were holding us loosened their grips on us before our senses got funky. Phoenix. Arya explains, so our savior is either one really large guy that can deal with two people at once or at least two people distracted them. Yeah, that makes Ember's eyes suddenly widen. Denise. She used a tree earlier. Phoenix and Arya look at each other immediately, sensing the same thing. There's a lot of people running on the path up ahead. We made it in time. Phoenix points out. Arya sighs sadly. Let's just hope that our saviors will be safe, then speak to us eventually or something. They make their way through the trees to the familiar path that connects their home with the town. Just as they take a step onto the path, two small figures in black run past them before stopping and looking back at them. What the hell? Nex asks. Ember shrieks, your hand. Forget my hand, look alive. They point down the path. Ember summons her claymore before turning around and blocking Kate's blade. She pushes her back in time for a burst of arcane magic and water to blast where Kate stood as a cloud of dirt fills the air. Ember grips the handle of her claymore as she steps it. She looks around for Kate on the floor, only to see her sister holding her tome in the air with her magic. Ember sighs. She teleported away. It makes sense. Emma acknowledges it's not wise to fight against 12 people, but now we know one ability they have. When the dirt finally settles, both groups come together to walk back to base, telling each other what they experienced and learned along the way. Ember heals Nex's hand before walking over to Caspin. The handsome man who used to model looked unusually sick in Phoenix's arms. Grant had his palm on Caspin's forehead, looking at his teammate with a serious expression. What's the verdict? Ember asks. Dark magic. Grant concludes as he pulls away his hand. He's been stricken with a nightmare so bad that it could affect his psyche if we don't pull him out of it. Ember and Emma. I hope you two don't mind helping me take care of it. We'll be glad to help, Emma answers. Say, how do you know both arcane and life magic is needed? Ember asks. Grant spaces out for a moment before answering dismissively, common sense. The twins look at each other with unconvinced expressions. They look ahead just as they make it back to base. Everyone stops when they see someone they didn't expect. Christopher Wallace. Denise questions with a look of suspicion. Christopher was standing by the front door, leaning against the doorframe. As soon as he sees them, he gives a friendly wave, a contrast to his scarred face. Welcome back. Electric and fire have a major problem. Nex looks at Caspin before sarcastically replying. We don't know how that feels. As soon as they entered their base, they were greeted by the sight of Sumire, Tara, and Alexis sitting in front of a large rolling bulletin board. The board was covered in photos and notes, connected by the typical red string. Isabella was standing next to it, explaining something before she noticed the others. Welcome back, nerds. Isabella greets with a smile. We were just in the middle of Caspin. Sumire is the first to get off the floor before she and Isabella run over to Phoenix and the shivering Caspin in his arms. It's okay, I got him, Phoenix reassures as he carries Caspin to the couch. The rest of the dark group immediately hurry to Caspin's side as Grant explains to Isabella and Sumire. Tara and Alexis get back on their feet and look at their friends. Why is this kind of surreal to see? Arya whispers. Alexis chuckles at that. Come on, did you forget how they acted during the camping trip when their food got raided by ants? There are more important things than camping trips, Christopher interrupts. Grant looks over and curls his finger to the twins. Come. The twins approach the couch, prompting the dark group to move away except for Phoenix. Noticing his saddened expression, Emma reassures him he's going to be okay. I know, especially with you helping the process. Phoenix smiles slightly at her before looking back at his unconscious friend. He moves Caspin's body to sit on the couch and place Caspin's head on his lap. Hey, Cass, Phoenix whispers as he caresses his hair. I hope you can hear me. I don't know what you saw or what your nightmares are about, but we're here for you when you wake up. I just wish I could have stopped whatever dragged you into this. Caspin whimpers yet seems to nuzzle against Phoenix's hand. Phoenix smiles at this before he looks up at Grant. Can I stay by his side for this? Grant gives a nod of approval. Ember glances at her sister, who has her usual calm expression. She then glances down, noticing Emma gripping the hem of her shirt. Perhaps it'll help the process for Caspin to have someone who loves him so dearly nearby. Emma forces a smile before she looks behind her. We'll be busy with this, but please explain what you've gathered with the clues. Finally, Christopher groans before walking over to the bulletin board. Just because your wife died doesn't mean you have to be a jerk when something affectionate happens. Next remarks. The others loudly shush them before giving Christopher forced smiles. He glances at Emma, Grant, and Ember, focusing on Caspin. Though he could see the grin on Phoenix, he then sighs and shakes his head before gesturing to the bulletin board. We have 9 murder victims from the past 2 years who died from blunt force trauma or stabbings within the last 4 years. We also have around 30 cases of theft. There are also a couple of other cases that the police don't think are related while the organization thinks otherwise. He flips the board, showing even more photos and papers connected by red string. There has also been a rise of disappearances for people who enter Cybele Forest. Visitation and camping trips have gone down as a result because no one wants to join the 13 people who already went missing unusually. Most of them are children. Carla whimpers at this, making Raymond put an arm around her shoulder. It's one line to kidnap people, but it's another to get those who can't even fight back, Alexis says bitterly. And we don't know for certain if those people have been kidnapped. Tara explains to the others. Mr. Wallace explained to us that the police searched everywhere, yet they haven't found anything to suggest that they were harmed or killed. That's where our problem comes in, Sumair adds. According to the police, some of the evidence has gone missing. Isabella walks up to the bulletin board and points at the blank pages pinned there. That's what I was trying to piece together when you guys came back. It seems that whenever theft occurs, evidence from the murder, missing, and theft cases go missing as well. Aria raises her hand. Then how did the police not connect the missing cases to the murder and theft cases if evidence goes missing in both? To Isabella's annoyance, Christopher nudges her out of the way. People go missing all the time. The organization has someone on the inside to check for traces of magic at every crime scene using the magic traces left behind in the theft and murder cases. They're able to match it to the traces relating to the missing people. They just don't bring it up to the police since they're paranoid enough as it is from evidence going missing. He takes a moment to take a deep breath. They're paranoid enough to accuse the organization of being the ones responsible for it. Aria's eyebrows rise at this. That's crazy talk. The other crazy talk here is one where they're stealing. Isabella nudges Christopher away. Ember looks over with a raised eyebrow. Hold on a second, why are you the one explaining it? Because I've been a thief for a couple of years before joining the dark group. Isabella casually admits. Tara and Sumair agree that I'm the best person here to talk about it. Almost everyone in the light group turns to Tara and Sumair to get a confirmation, which they gave with a nod. As soon as they look back at Isabella, she clears her throat and flips the board back to the murder and theft cases. First of all, whoever they are, they're poor as fuck. Everyone chuckles or laughs at this except for Christopher, who shakes his head at her. She rolls her eyes and continues. I'm serious though, because believe it or not, most of the theft consists of what you'd need to live, such as food and water. Emphasis on most because it wasn't consistent. The food they nab nowadays is a combo of perishable and non-perishable food. However, the food they used to steal in the beginning of the thefts were only non-perishables. Denise couldn't help but grin. Let me guess, they only started stealing perishables after stealing a fridge. Pretty much. Isabella confirms to Denise's surprise. Whoever these masked people are ended up stealing a lot of furniture and appliances based on the amount of mattresses and food stolen over the years. I have a pretty good guess that we're dealing with at least 5 people. Ember looks over again with a frown. At least 5 people? We already know there's 5 people: Rouge, Kate, Hatchet Guy, and the ones who killed Yoko. Christopher explains, however, we shouldn't ignore the possibility that there could be more people involved, and they're smart enough to steal enough to make us believe that it's only the 5 we know of. Aria looks over at Ember, who is focusing on Caspin, before raising her hand again. Well, there was someone else when Phoenix, Ember, Caspin, and I were attacked by 4 of the 5. Whoever it was making Caspin see things while making our ears ring and such. We couldn't even move either. Hallucinations, messing with the senses, paralyzation. Christopher puts his hand on his chin. Did you see who it was? I couldn't, and neither could Ember and Phoenix. Caspin was staring right at it, but whatever it did made him pass out and have a nightmare. Christopher looks over at Grant and the twins as they back away from Caspin. The light gray and green in Emma and Ember's hairs have risen up to their ears, while there are more dark gray streaks in Grant's. Caspin's disheveled hair was almost entirely dark green now, with strands of his natural blonde in between. He was also shaking slightly, bumping his head on Phoenix's lap. Well, Grant turns around with his arms crossed. We finally got rid of his nightmare. But we can't continue the process since it used almost all of his mana with it. If this happened to a member of the light group, they would be awake by now, since the loss of mana doesn't negatively affect them while they're asleep. But with Caspin, his mana is unstable to the point where he could have a magical outburst. And we're in the middle of a forest, so... Phoenix caresses Caspin's hair as he looks at Christopher. I don't think the person that did this to Caspin should even be considered a person. I agree. Ember shivers. It was frightening with the amount of power it had and how it whispered to the masked people. It even reminded me. It's not her. Grant cuts her off with a glare. Ember stammers for a moment before mumbling. I wasn't going to say it was her. Her. Christopher raises an eyebrow. The groups immediately avert their eyes from him as tension rises in the room. Oh right. Christopher looks back at the board dismissively. You fought by Rena years ago, right? You all left a lot of magic in the forest from your battle. They did. Grant grunts before he walks closer to him, but she has nothing to do with all of this. What we should focus on at the moment is to find out who it is. We can scratch Pennywise off the list at least. Arya quips. This makes a few people laugh. Easing the tension, however, Grant still had a look of distaste. Perhaps one of the missing pieces of evidence could help us figure out who it, their leader, is. What went missing? A set of fingerprints, 2 separate hairs, a knife, basically any DNA. Christopher gestures to the blank papers that connect to some cases. It at least serves as a reminder that despite doing all of these crimes, these individuals are humans capable of making mistakes. Emma approaches the board, carefully looking over the photos of the cases. Carefully, Christopher looks at her and Grant before stepping away. I have to return to base. Xavier expects me to keep him updated on your progress. Any kind of progress is good in his eyes, but I do expect a breakthrough, he says as he walks to the door. Best of luck. As the others wave goodbye, Emma's eyes linger on the crime scene photos for Harpwood's murder. A few showed his BLD splattered on nearby books, emphasizing the brutality of the murder. To her, Grant glances at her. Noticing her frown, Raymond walks over and puts a hand on her shoulder. He assures, I heard that he was knocked out right away. Perhaps he didn't even feel a thing. I suppose. She sighs. Don't worry, he's at peace now, relaxing in a library of his own. Emma smiles a bit at the thought. Yeah, he'd be enjoying a cup of chamomile tea. Raymond smiles back. He's probably with his wife too, just talking about the history of Drevrena. Maybe even taking a walk outside before sitting down on a bench and writing what he saw in his diary. She trails off. She and Raymond immediately look at each other. He slowly starts. Wait, didn't Mr. Ivans say that Mrs. Ivans was about to tell him something that Harpwood had mentioned right before she died? Emma quickly finishes before she looks back at the board. I don't think that could be just a coincidence. They then turn to Christopher, who was about to close the front door behind him. Wait, Mr. Wallace. Raymond runs over and puts his arm between the door and door frame. Christopher pulls the door open. What? Did the police get Harpwood's diary? Raymond asks quickly. Oh right. Christopher crosses his arms. They did think of grabbing it. If Harpwood wrote about any conflicts he could have had that may have led to his death. Unfortunately, they couldn't find the diary at the library. Raymond looks back at Emma in exasperation. She walks over, looking at Christopher with pleading eyes. Are you sure? I don't know what you want me to say. Christopher shrugs. They looked everywhere, but all they found was his desk covered in files and papers. If you excuse me. He turns around, only for his foot to bump against a box. He quickly backs away from it, narrowing his eyes. Careful, it could be a bomb. Emma and Raymond look at the magicless Christopher, taking a protective stance in front of them before they chuckle. Relax, we can shield ya. Raymond pats his back. Emma approaches the box and picks it up with her magic. She puts a barrier around it before shaking it aggressively. Nothing happened. Definitely not a bomb. She walks back inside and places the box on an end table, catching everyone's attention. They gather around Emma as she opens the box carefully. She gasps when she sees an old brown notebook and a folded piece of paper. Harpwood's diary. Raymond immediately goes to grab it, only for Christopher to grab his wrist. Hold on, we shouldn't touch it without gloves. He orders I should take it to the police station to get any forensic evidence. Check the letter, but don't. Emma cuts him off. On it, Emma summons a pair of gloves onto her hands before picking up the folded paper. When she opens it, she reads out what was written in neat handwriting. To the light and dark groups, you don't know me nor have you met me before. However, I know you. I know that you're the ones in charge of the investigation. I believe that this diary will be of use to you because of what Harpwood has seen 4 years ago. I'm aware that you all have crossed paths with the ones who committed these crimes. I believe that we can be great allies since I have a personal agenda against one of the perpetrators. I wish for us to meet in person. But at the moment, my personal appearance may make you all uncomfortable. For now, these letters will have to do. I will also do my best to find the missing evidence and return them to you. Please be aware that I can't say much at this time. Just in case this letter gets intercepted by them once we meet in person one day, I will tell you everything. See you soon, Andrus Rock. Andrus Rock. Emma stares at the name before she looks over the paper. I don't think any of us know them. Raymond looks at the box, but we can trust them just for bringing us the diary. We're dealing with people that have killed innocent citizens while also having enough magic to incapacitate a dark group member. Christopher states firmly it's not wise to blindly trust everyone who claims they're going to help. Not even you, Denise suddenly accuses. Christopher remains silent.